LinkedIn asked people to give advice to their 20-year-old selves on what they would do today. This one lesson came up again and again. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Hey, welcome to the Focus Group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host Tim Bennett. Find us on Wednesdays here on Facebook Live or YouTube Live. And of course, focusgroupradio.com is the URL for our website. And all things Focus Group reside there, all our shows, including TFG Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast, which we would like to have you subscribe, like, and rate to, or subscribe to, and then like and rate. At the beginning, I kicked off or teased an article that we're going to be talking about in Shop Talk. That comes at the second half of our show, so probably about 20 to 25 minutes into the broadcast. And that's an article we're going to look at that's kind of fascinating. LinkedIn did one of their pop surveys, and they asked people to give advice to their 20-year-old self. And surprisingly, a interesting answer came up over and over again about what people would recommend their younger selves do.
So, a lot of sex.
A lot more. Actually, that was one thing that did
pop. Wasn't that on Seinfeld? Didn't they say that on Seinfeld? Wasn't that one of those things on Seinfeld or something?
More sex. More sex.
Have more sex.
Actually, that is something that popped up in the survey was, your 20s are a time when you should be experimenting and exploring. And some of us, I think, got shot out of the cannon of college, and we were very super serious. So were you super serious out of school? Tim, you and I actually were, because we had to start paying bills right away, right?
I thought when we were a year out of college, we were old. I didn't want to listen to music that was a year old. I thought music from college was old. Now I look back on it and thinking, what were we thinking? People, what was the rush? But of course, that was the deal. It was the 80s. It was the go-go 80s. It was Reagan.
Big shoulder pads, crazy hair.
You had to get a job right away. Dallas was Who Shot JR? It was the whole big thing. You couldn't wait around. You had to get a job.
Turner Classic Movies is airing maybe this month and next month. They're airing The Bonfire of the Vanities, the movie based on the famous Tom Wolfe book. In fact, it was a book that just dominated the world for a while. Tom Hanks, Melanie Griffith, F. Murray Abraham. It's basically an all-star cast. I actually enjoyed the movie when it came out because I think the director's intent was to make it. Do you remember The Bonfire of the Vanities, the book?
Yes.
Did you read the book?
I did not.
But you remember the movie, right?
Yeah, yes, I do. I love the whole idea of the whole thing, but I didn't read it.
Yeah, so the movie was pretty maligned, and they think it's I don't think it's a bad movie. I love watching it, but watching it is watching a time capsule of the 80s, right? It's the cars, the fashion, the hair, everything. There's even a scene where some artist is introduced to Tom Hanks, and they're like, this is the famous poet so-and-so. He has AIDS. Because back then, back in the 80s and actually the early 90s, this was still, actually all the way up into the 2000s, it was still a major crisis. But it was an interesting so our point about being in our 20s in the 80s, it's kind of, we were in our 20s in the mid to late 80s. We kind of got the tail end of that, right?
I mean, is there anything that you would have done? Is there anything you wish you had done? I mean, you could always go back and say, I wish I had done this. I wish I'd gone back and got a degree in this or something. Then would have been the time to do it. But is there something you wish you had done or you did differently?
No. Honest to God, I did what I wanted to do. I moved to the city, which was also dictated by my career choice. So back in the day, if you were a designer or graphics, it was New York, Chicago, San Francisco. I think Los Angeles might have been another destination for that, but those are the big markets.
I mean, Waterbury and Hartford weren't on the list?
Brass, capital of the world, right? Yeah. No, they weren't. Neither was Holy Land. That was a pilgrimage Tim and I used to do in high school to our local attraction in Waterbury. But it was, anyway, back to Bonfire and what we're saying about our 20s. And it's, no, I don't. I look back now and, when you see a character pick up a telephone, a corded phone, you're like, wow, that's what I wish we spent more time recognizing. Wow, this is pretty cool. It may not be as useful as the cell phone, but Phones were phones,
Yeah,
and
no, one thing I'm glad I did is I took the advice from my grandparents and probably my mom, and I would say a few professors and probably some parents along the way. And you remember Dickie and Jimmy Stern?
I do.
I don't know
Yeah.
if you remember them. Of taking advantage of everything and kind of this whole, I remember I had a professor, Dr. Artell, the importance of showing up, and that was a big thing at Marietta, was this importance of showing up. And I did everything. I mean, I would not have, I didn't really turn any invite down or anything down. Now, I would never do any of the things now that I did then or go places I did then. Sometimes I often think about what was I thinking. I would just show up places, have no idea where I was going to stay, no idea what was in store. You know, you would just show up somewhere. And even up until not recently, but when I was asked to go on that trip to Africa with Chris, I would never do that now. But I was just like, oh yeah, I'll go. But you were the same way when I said,
Yeah.
hey John, let's go to the Caribbean for your for your 40th birthday. We've got this boat that's sailing. Nobody wants to go on. Okay, when do we leave? Or
Yeah.
when we went to Italy, the same sort of thing. I'm not so sure I would do maybe that now. So fly by night. But
Well, the environment is so different given the event, right? And the event is not just a United States thing; it's a worldwide thing.
Right.
You reminded me of our friend Pat. When Pat used to pal around with this gang of friends, one of them used to work at the Bloomingdale's scent counter, and he used to always hear people talking about things. And one day he heard a woman mentioning a party that they were having on the Upper East Side. He mentions it he says to the friend network, there's a party we got to go to on the Upper East Side. They all go to this swanky place.
they just show up.
And they show up, ding dong. This woman answers the phone or the door.
Oh
All
my
these
gosh.
these folks are there, like with a bottle of champagne, like warm champagne. It's probably Pat, Cecile. There's a whole group of them, Raymond. And she's like, hello? And they're like, we're here for the party. She's like, you're here for the party? Well, why don't you wait in the kitchen? She was having a swanky dinner party. And she put them in the kitchen, and they're like, well, our friends are going to show up. Well, why don't you wait here till your friends show up? And once they realized what was going on, they were stuck in the kitchen while she's giving a dinner party in the dining room. So talk about going anywhere and doing anything, right?
Susie Joyner did that. She was the same thing. She overheard about this party. It was the same sort of thing, but it ended up being it was a wedding reception thing. And it was in Philadelphia, really in a very nice area in Society Hill. And Susie hears about it. She says, oh, let's go. So we all, half in the, few cocktails in us, off we go. And someone says, what side of the, are you bride or groom side of the family? So Susie catches on and figures out we were with the brothers Proctor.
Oh, my God.
She finds it was the Proctor brothers that were getting married. They're like, okay, we were in the kitchen making food, getting plates of food. But it was this huge, big wedding reception thing. We were mortified. When I think about it as we were sobering up, I'm like, we are not supposed to be in here. It was a very intimate wedding dinner reception party.
But they left you
We're
there,
there.
right? They were
Well,
like,
they kept
okay.
looking. They couldn't figure out. They're like, were you friends from college? Did you go to grad school with him? They were. We were walking around like we knew everybody. Like oh yeah, we're here for the wedding. But
That's what you did in your 20s, right? I remember one time, friends of mine, I used to work on the college newspaper called Pipe Dream when I was at Binghamton University, and friends of mine from the paper were like, hey, we're going out to Fire Island. Do you want to join us? Yeah, sounds fun. And we went to, it was it wasn't the Pines or the Grove, it was one of the straight communities. We go out. I had packed a thing, and on the ferry out, I said to this guy, John Simmons, who was like the sports writer for the college paper, I'm like, where are we staying? I don't know. I think we're staying on the floor in the newspaper office out there. And I ended up sleeping on a floor, and so that's what you did, right? You just, like, okay, I'm not going to do this again, but and it ended up being a lot of fun. So.
yeah, no, that's what you did. You're exactly right. That's what you did. But you wouldn't do that now. You certainly wouldn't just say, let's go out there and not have any idea where you were going to stay.
No. And that goes to something my mom told me the other day when I was visiting her. She said that when we lived in Glens Falls, New York, I was very young. She used to send us down the street to the store. She used to give my sister a change purse with money and a note inside. And she'd give it to the guy that owned the grocery store. He'd fill the bag with what my mom wanted. We'd bring it back. And then he would send a note now and then, like, Carol, you're $5. You owe $5 more. Put that in the change purse. And my mom said, I would never send you guys blocks away on an errand like that nowadays because of all the stuff that goes on, right? But that's what you could do back then.
Wow. Wouldn't you love to know what you got, what the list was? Eggs,
I
can of tomato sauce, evaporated milk.
I was gonna say
You
evaporated
know,
milk as carnation, right? It was that little
yeah, it's
can.
probably that sort of stuff. She was baking something.
I'd love to find out. I'll have to ask her about that because these stories are bubbling up now. I don't know if it's the same with your folks as they age. Like all these stories are bubbling up, and I'm like, why didn't I hear this before? And like, okay, now I'm hearing it now.
Yeah, my dad told a funny story that I didn't know about a neighbor, which I thought was so absurd. But my dad had this neighbor had these chickens. He decided to put chickens in and across the street. My father just our dogs were going after the chickens, and my father had taken some Rust-Oleum paint and painted one of the chickens' eggs gold, and put it in the nest.
That's great.
And this old guy, he worked at the Southbury Training School, was convinced that this chicken
Laid a
had
golden
laid a
egg.
golden egg, but really believed it, and sent it up to Hartford to the University of
For
Connecticut school
analysis.
to have it checked for analysis. My father thought it was a joke. This guy totally believed it, was carrying this egg around like it was worth something. And yeah, to this day, my dad, he never knew my dad had done it, and couldn't figure out where this golden egg had come from, and then realized that somebody had played a joke on him, was very upset. But can you imagine somebody believing that it was really a gold egg?
I can because they're recounting votes in Maricopa County as we speak. So the golden egg seems like a really simple and innocent one. But on that note, let's go to Caught Your Eye.
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
So you're up, Mr. Bennett.
Have you been watching the Olympics at all?
Yes, bits and pieces. They broadcast it like on every NBC outlet possible, so you don't really know which one is showing. Of course, I would like to watch diving, swimming, and gymnastics, specifically the men's category.
Well, they're not wearing the little Speedos anymore, John. They're wearing those long panties.
They're supposed to make them faster in the water, but I still think they look sexy, regardless of what they're wearing. These guys are.
Well, I saw this story. I don't know if you did, but apparently the TV news.
I love this.
Did you see this one?
Well, I saw your pictures, and once I realized, and you're going to explain what's going on, I couldn't believe this.
So this was the broad what would you call it? The newscasters or the broadcasters?
Yeah.
The TV channel of South Korea.
The
network.
network.
I don't even know the network. What the hell am I trying to say? So the South Korean television network was, as all the countries do, simulcasting the opening, and I love the opening, the Parade of Countries. Now, Ralph Polo does our opening outfits. Now, they looked a little bit like Russian military outfits this year. I'm going to send a note to Ralph, let him know.
Okay.
They looked like Russian sailor outfits. But so I love these sort of stories because that this was not done on purpose, although the South Koreans actually thought they were doing a service to their listeners in South Korea and trying to educate them about countries of the world. But it came off as very racist and very stereotypical, unflattering, and politically incorrect. And so I love the story for all those reasons, because they were trying to be nice about it, but it was a huge flop, and they've got huge pushback. So I'll read it. It says, pizza for Italy and Dracula for Romania. It said, South Korean broadcasters apologize for Olympics' inexcusable mistakes. So as the Tokyo Games were opening, during the opening ceremony, they said it's a gratuitous affair with bulging muscles, beaming athletes, proudly walking the Parade of Nations. And as they were coming in, this South Korean network, MBC, so not to be confused with N as in Nancy, M as in Mary, MBC, they had decided that each team, when they would come in, that they were going to provide a picture and some ID of the country to help educate the audience. And they were also going to list their GDP, the gross domestic product, as well as the coronavirus vaccination rate, which nobody could quite understand either. So they were going to let you know how many people in the country were shot up from the event and what their GDP was, as well as some sort of image that they thought would represent the country and then where they were on the map. So that's where we'll start. But they said it came off as offensive and unflattering. So, for instance, when Haiti came in, showed the picture of Haiti, They said Haiti came in, and underneath it said, the political situation is fogged by the assassination of a president. And that's what came across the screen there. Then the Syrian athletes came in. They aired a caption, rich underground resources, a civil war has been going on for 10 years. Okay.
There's a trend.
Then the Marshall Islands came in. Now, you know the Marshall Islands is one of our territory. So it says a nuclear test site for the United States. That's the Marshall Islands. Pretty much summed it up.
Summed up in a note card.
Ukraine comes in. So the Ukrainian athletes come in. They showed an image of Chernobyl, all burned out, the Chernobyl disaster. And then it said the world's worst nuclear accident. Then Italy walked on. The broadcaster pulled up a picture of a pizza. So the pizza was there. Italy walked in. Followed by Norway. There was a fillet of salmon. So salmon came in comes Norway.
All of Italy can be reduced to a pizza. All of Norway can be reduced to salmon. Okay.
Then Romania came in. They had a picture, black and white picture of Dracula. Talked about Dracula.
That's right.
Then the team of El Salvador came in. They showed Bitcoin because that's where cryptocurrency has apparently been founded. So El Salvador had Bitcoin. So then they started getting complaints. They said there were reams of complaints coming in from unhappy Korean viewers, and they wanted an apology. So they said, so the broadcaster immediately the network put out this notice and statement that said, in today's opening ceremony, we had inappropriate photos that were used when introducing countries like Ukraine and Haiti. We also had inappropriate photos and subtitles that were used for some countries. So we apologize to the viewers of Ukraine and other countries. Then they said, but to make matters worse, one of the Korean-based journalists said that there was also typos. For instance, they said when Sweden was described, they described Sweden as the country that developed welfare, but it was wrongly spelled to read cow's blood soup.
Oh, I see. So the translation of welfare, they had screwed that up somehow.
Screwed it up, and so it became which was essentially a popular culinary dish for the Asian nation. A musician from Senegal got upset. He said that this was totally racist, and then he said the whole games were racist, and because his performance was axed. So then they said, so somebody said, how would the South Koreans have liked it if we had introduced the South Korean team as the country with the seawall ferry disaster? Remember the ferry?
Yes, I do.
Sank.
Big one. Yeah.
So they said that they were concerned. So the network again apologized and said they were very concerned. They really were just trying to do images and captions that were going to make it easier for viewers to understand the entering countries with a very quick image that they thought would help identify the country. They said, however, they do admit that maybe there was some lack of considered as typical Asian from.
Apologize after, right? Yeah.
Maybe there was some lack. Maybe we admit there was some lack of consideration for the countries concerned. And on further inspection, maybe we were not thorough enough. We are deeply sorry. It's an inexcusable mistake. We also promise to do a full review, and we vow to make no more Olympic blunders. So they said that NBC was not the only broadcaster. Apparently, the NBC affiliate in New York was also criticized. China has made a huge protest because they're very upset because when the Chinese delegation came in, NBC, right where you are, John, New York City, apparently showed a map of China, and they failed to include the island of Taiwan in the South China Sea.
Wow. Well, but yeah, that's always going to be a problem because Taiwan, we support them. They're an ally, and they are not considered, but the Chinese think they're part of, yeah.
So the Chinese people, you have to understand, John, this is very upsetting for the Chinese. So the Chinese consulate general in New York criticized the American network for using an incomplete map of China when broadcasting the Chinese delegation's entry into the Tokyo Olympics. The statement that was released Saturday said, this created a very bad influence and harmed the dignity and emotion of the Chinese people. We urge NBC to recognize the serious nature of this problem. The Consulate General in New York would like to point out that the map is an expression of national territory which symbolizes national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Wow. The statement said, adding, attempts to use the Olympic Games to play political tricks and self-promotion to achieve ulterior motives will never succeed. NBC's map of China did not include Taiwan or the South China Sea. The broadcaster said they wish not to make a comment.
they wish not to make a comment.
Yeah.
The Olympics always bring up some good faux pas, don't they?
I love them.
Sometimes there are great moments and sometimes there are not. And the summer are my favorites. So I got to look at online and figure out the schedules and what channels are airing what, because I do want to watch, especially some of the floor gymnastics with the women's team. I know we have a good team. Volleyball was on the other day,
Well, listen, the men's basketball team lost to France. I mean, how do we lose to France in basketball?
Didn't we invent the game?
And the women, right? Listen, we have the women's gymnastics team in the first round was second, which is it's also unheard of. Things are a little sloppy.
Well, let's just go back to the whole beginning that we're celebrating the 2020 Olympics in 2021 because of the worldwide event. I mean, the whole thing's crazy. So the fact that they're pulling it off at all is pretty amazing. But I agree with you.
Yeah, they did say that the head of the Olympics did say that. It's a shame. They said that the facilities are the best he's seen in decades. He said the Tokyo facilities and what Japan built were unbelievable. They said the facilities were just unbelievable. The next games in 2024, which will be quick, coming up, are in Paris.
Yeah.
So what caught your eye?
Well, mine was a bit different, and it was kind of a complementary story to what we saw last week when Jeff Bezos went into orbit atop the Blue Origin rocket, and he was in the capsule with 3 other folks. And it was I watched the entire...
What'd you think of it?
Well, it seemed to go pretty quick, and I was worried when the rocket took off, but I was like, this is amazing that they were able to do this. And the other thing I thought was when they were in orbit, they were throwing little balls around and high-fiving. I would have glued myself to the window and just looked out the window the whole time. I experienced zero-G once in that zero-G plane, and it's cool.
Right.
But I think the view is what would have really made me just stop, oh my God, we're above
How high
the Earth.
did you go up?
Oh, zero-G does not go nowhere near that. In fact, they imitate zero gravity by doing a hyperbolic jump. So the plane goes straight up almost like a rocket, and then at the top of the arc is where you experience zero-G, and then it starts coming down. And I remember I was supposed to have taken medicine for this, like Dramamine or something, but no one told me about it. And I was like, I'll be fine. After the 7th or 8th jump, it's like, whoa, my stomach, So in honor of that, what caught my eye is this article about a company that's launching a different way to go to orbit. And it's called, let me get it here, Space Perspective. They've debuted a $125,000 package that brings travelers to the edge of the atmosphere on a space-age hot air balloon. So it's a Florida-based firm, and it aims to usher in a new luxury air and travel experience with their groundbreaking tour aboard the spaceship Neptune. So it's a capsule that is lifted off into the atmosphere by a hydrogen balloon that actually stands 650 feet tall, the balloon. It's a lot like some of these NASA-built weather balloons that go very, very high into the upper atmosphere. And just to put that in perspective, the balloon is half the height of the Empire State Building. So if the Empire State Building is like 1,300 feet high, then the balloon is like half that, which is amazing. And it's filled with hydrogen. Now, hydrogen is the lightest, lighter than air, and it's one of the best things for lifting. But we always associate hydrogen with the disaster of the Hindenburg, one of my favorite things as a kid. Man, I used to chew up anything Hindenburg related. But it's been used safely since, and in fact, since 1700, I think, for hot air ballooning per se, there's never been an accident that involved hydrogen. So the Neptune capsule can seat up to, I think it's 8 people. There is a bathroom and a bar on board. It takes the entire trip is going to take about 6 hours. So you would launch from like Cape Canaveral, for instance, down in Florida. And it would take you 2 or 3 hours to get up to the very highest point, and they would keep you up there for a little while. You're at the windows looking out, and then you're going to come gradually down. So the entire trip is 6 hours. Now, I think 6 hours is a little bit better than 6 minutes for my money.
Are you tethered to something?
The balloon, yeah. Let me see if I can.
No, I mean, or do they just send you up and you float?
Do you mean, are you tethered as in the seatbelt in your chair or something?
I mean, so they send you up in this balloon. So does the thing then just float? Like, are you going to end up in Venezuela? I mean, where do you go?
No, they can control the ascent and the descent based on. But of course, I think air currents play a big thing, and they didn't really talk about that. That's an interesting point you bring up here. It's inherently safer than a rocket because it's a balloon, and it's more ecologically sound because, again, it's just the balloon is filled with hydrogen, and they're selling this for $125,000 per ticket. to go up there. This would be, and I don't think that I don't know if you achieve 0G. They don't really mention that here. You're basically 17 or 18 miles above the surface of the Earth, which is pretty high up. I'm not sure that's high enough to rank as astronaut level. It's 100,000 feet, 18 miles. Yeah. So, and they did a test back on June 18th of this year from the Space Coast Spaceport in Titusville, Florida, that was highly successful. So they're opening up this this trip for, you see the picture I have up there, Tim. Now that's what and there's enormous windows, and everybody sits in front of the window. I don't know how you would go to the bathroom in this. I don't even. There must be like
there was a bathroom, right?
Bathroom and a bar, yeah. So I think for at the initial price of $125,000, in my opinion, given that you're in this thing for 6 hours, and the trip up could be really spectacular until you get to the part where you can see the curvature of the Earth and the atmosphere, my money would be I would do this before I would sit on top of a rocket. Or I guess the Virgin Galactic thing, the plane makes sense, right? Because that's coming in like a glider. But there's something about this that appeals to me. Unless every cable broke and the thing careens to Earth, I can't see a disaster happening. But is that famous last words?
Well, you'd want to know whether I think your point was well taken. You'd want to know whether you reached 0G. Isn't that the whole point?
Well,
you want to be in outer space. Right? You want to be in space.
Yeah, in outer space, technically, the orbit of the space station is not even considered breaking the higher orbits of Earth. Like I think on your way to the moon is when you're finally out of Earth's gravitational pull. But I agree, you might want the 0G experience, and you might experience it here. It didn't say here if guests would be treated that way, but interesting. I
love the pictures. If you're watching the video, there's some woman there looks like she's in some sort of swing coat taking a picture under 35 millimeter, and then the other broad hanging out the window. Look at her. See her leaning over like she's in the London Eye.
Well, it's that kind of thing, yeah. So that's what
I have no interest in that.
You don't?
No. Save your money. Don't get it for me.
Well, if the price comes down, it would be something I would consider. I would not mind seeing the Earth from orbit.
What would you pay?
That's a great one, Tim. I don't know. It feels like maybe $10,000. 6 hour trip, $10,000.
Bob gonna go?
Yeah. Well, then that's 20. I'll do 10 a ticket, right?
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? You'd pay 10 to go?
You
would, because you're a space nut.
If I had enough money if someone said to me, if you spent $125 to go on this balloon to space, no one's going to notice the money's gone. Just spend it and enjoy it. I would do it. I would actually do it because I think it'd be really a cool experience.
Yeah, I don't know. I know I'm one of these old, I'd probably told the Wright brothers to stay on Earth. Anyway.
What are you building, a plane? What's a plane?
What are you crazy? Yeah, get a faster horse.
Yeah.
Anyway, so hey, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we've got business birthday and some shop talk.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
Welcome back to The Focus Group. John Nash with Tim Bennett. FocusGroupRadio.com is the destination for everything Focus Group related. All our shows are there, including TFG Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast, about 20 minutes long, 3 stories. You're in and out, as we say. And thanks to Jeff Kubetta, our composer, that did the opening song and our rejoin song. He heard it he sent me a note the other day. He goes, "Oh, I'm so thrilled you're using the music." All right, so in this half hour, we have a business birthday. Not a full half hour. In this half of the show, we have a business birthday, and we have a shop talk we teased at the beginning of the show about what our 20-year-old selves would tell our younger selves about business and career, which I think is fascinating. But we'll get to that in a few minutes. But without further ado.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So our business birthday today, we've done before.
Have we done
And
before?
yeah, we have done before, and so we're going to do it again, only
It
because
was
we're
years
going
ago,
to.
Tim. It had to be years ago.
It was at least seven,
Okay, yeah.
at least 7 years ago. And but there was another business birthday. The guy's name is, I believe it was Ernie Trigato. I'll say it wrong. Anyway, it was the founder of Club Med,
Mm.
and but the only bio I could find was in French. He was a French guy. And I couldn't find anything in English, and I don't have a subscription to one of the newspapers where the obit was. So we're going to do this one. So the business birthday today, July 28th, born July 28th, 1907, is Earl Silas Tupper. Born
I
July
love this
28th,
one. Yeah.
1907. He died in 1983 at 76, an American businessman and inventor, best known, of course, as the inventor of Tupperware, which is an airtight plastic container for storing food. And he also founded the related home products company that bears his name, Tupperware Plastics Company. He was born in Berlin, New Hampshire. He studied at Bryant College, which is now Bryant University. He began, he initially wanted to be a landscaper and started working in the nursery business. But when the Depression happened, he fell into bankruptcy and ended up getting a job at DuPont Chemical Company. And while he was working there, there was a bunch of leftover slag, and they call it polyethylene slag. They were inflexible pieces of plastic, and most of them were black. And it was a waste product of the oil refining process of plastics. And he asked his supervisor if he could use this stuff, and the supervisor didn't care. So he purified the slag and molded it into different sorts of products and containers, and ended up making cups and bowls and plates and things. And they ended up using them in World War II. So this is how he started the business. So he later then designed what he called liquid-proof airtight lids or seals, which were inspired. He said he was inspired by the secure seal of a paint can lid. That's why they're very different than just putting a lid on something. It was how you would seal a paint can. So he founded the Tupperware Plastics Company in 1938, and he ended up introducing the plastics to hardware and department stores in 1948. But then he joined forces with a woman named, this is such a great name, Brownie Wise. So
That's her
Brownie
actual
Wise,
name, right? Brownie Wise.
Brownie Wise in 1946. You'll see her picture there if you're watching on our video. Brownie Wise, he joined with her, and she had called and gave him a lengthy telephone call and convinced him that he should be doing parties at home, and said she had this extraordinary success by hosting these what she called Tupperware parties at her house, and said based upon this marketing strategy, and she also convinced these other early pioneers, Tom and Ann Damigella from Everett, Mass., that they were doing parties as well and had tremendous success. So he was convinced by Brownie and Tom and Ann to withdraw all of the products from the retail stores in the early 50s and just did parties, which,
Wow.
as we know now,
Wow.
are Tupperware parties. So this was what they know now as the first instance of what became known as party plan marketing. They had moved the corporate headquarters from Massachusetts to Orlando. He and Brownie Wise had a falling out. 1958. Didn't say what they fell out about, but there was a fallout, and he dismissed her and ended up selling the Tupperware company for $16 million to Rexall. Remember Rexall drugs?
I do indeed. Yeah, it's an old name.
And after that, he divorced his wife. So I wonder if maybe he and Brownie. I'm gonna project here. I'm speculate. I wonder if he and Brownie had a little.
And that part of the whole deal was Brownie had to go, and
Brownie had to go.
I could see it. I could see it. Yeah.
So he divorces the wife and gives up his U.S. citizenship and hightails it to Costa Rica to
Wow.
avoid taxes. So something was up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Donates his land, 428 acres of his land in Rhode Island, to his alma mater, Bryant University, which later then sold the campus to Brown University. So he died in Costa Rica in 1983 at the age of 76. And if you're watching, of course, John has a picture. We have a picture of Aunt Barbara there, who was we've been a guest on the show many times, one of the top Tupperware salespeople. Still hosts parties. She does a show every Saturday night on Facebook. If you haven't caught it, it's
Quite
the
fun.
hoot.
Yeah, quite the
Yeah,
hoot is a good way of putting it.
yeah. So Earl Silas Tupper, the inventor of Tupperware. So there's Brownie Wise. Yeah.
Nicely done. And so I'm surprised there's not a tell-all, that we haven't had a tell-all that involved Brownie Wise, the renunciation of your citizenship, fleeing to Costa Rica to not pay taxes. There's something, Tim. I think you smell a fire. You see
Thumbs
smoke.
up, don't you think?
You see smoke, and you know where there's smoke, there's usually fire, right?
Sounds like it'd be a Netflix movie.
Brownie Wise.
Earl Tupper. Brownie Wise.
I would just call the movie Brownie Wise.
Brownie Wise.
Brownie Wise. And you would do the thing where Brownie's in one, and maybe you put a little is in there somewhere. Brownie is wise, or Brownie knows best.
And don't you think Brownie smokes a cigarette? I bet she smokes.
Probably till the day she dropped, she probably was doing Benson Hedges Light 100s, and she probably had that little case that clicked at the top, the little lighter.
I made Tupperware
what it is today. Well, we didn't see that your love for the company, Mrs. Crawford.
Don't with me, Earl.
Fella. Yeah, Earl. I'm gonna burp that lid.
This is my first time at
What
the
did
Tupperware
Aunt
party.
Barbara always say? It's something about you do something to a trash can, but you
No, Tupperwares have seals.
Seals.
Trash cans have lids.
lids. Because I said something about burping the lid. She goes, trash cans have lids. Tupperware has seals.
Tupperware has seals. Yeah.
All right. So at the beginning of the broadcast, I teased an article that we wanted to discuss, and it's called "LinkedIn Asked People to Give Advice to Their 20-Year-Old Self." The same lesson came up again and again. Professional after professional said this is what they wished they understood when they were young. So it kicks off the article by saying, thanks to the likes of Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, there is an idea out there that the young are more likely to build groundbreaking businesses. They are full of energy, untainted by cynicism, and generally unencumbered by responsibilities. I have issues with all those things in that sentence, but we'll continue. Research shows, however, that the average age of founders of successful tech startups is a relatively mature 47 years of age. A few decades of accumulated wisdom seems to count for quite a bit. Wouldn't it be great if you could somehow combine both sets of advantages? And that's what LinkedIn tried to do with a recent tweet. The social network asked for more than 1 million followers for the best advice they'd give their 20-year-old self. So the resulting thread and the information came about with quirky stuff. Get tested for ADHD earlier. Beware of reply all. Eat less pizza. Some of the lifestyle stuff. Others, like believe in yourself and don't procrastinate, were more inspirational than actual. But among all the advice, one particular bit of wisdom kept coming up again and again. And what was that, Mr. Bennett?
It was action beats deliberation. So essentially that you need to just jump right in and don't overthink what you're doing because it will work out, essentially. That if you have a very rigid plan, that it's not necessarily going to be what you end up doing, that you just need to get in and do it. And that most people end up having to learn by trial and error. And that's what's going to be successful rather than having some sort of rigid plan that you stick to. I was surprised by it a little bit because I think people that, well, what do you think?
I think my takeaway after reading this was I tend to agree, and I wish that someone had told me this, but what's missing here is this other thing that they all kind of bookended with that advice of just dive right in. Because a lot of the messaging revolves around the fact that the first 10 years of your career, you're going to be bouncing around trying to figure out what work is for you, what work you like doing, and how you want to contribute or collaborate. Maybe you want to be an independent business owner or whatever. So this kind of thing was more like, well, maybe these 10 years out of school, you're going to be working, but maybe you shouldn't be obsessed with the perfect job or the perfect stepping stone for a career that you've might have manufactured in your head back in class in school or even back in high school. So I tend to agree with it, but I think they need to emphasize that notion that it's not that you're not going to be working. It's that what you're doing in your early 20s may not be what you're doing later on, but it's going to inform that.
Right. It said don't wait to know what you're doing to get started. The best way to figure out your career is through action. And where I disagreed with this, there are a number of people that, of course, we know. If you wanted to be an accountant or a doctor,
yeah, there's a course you go through. There's a steps.
Right. So if you said you wanted to be a doctor, I don't think you just wait around for 10 years
No, you don't.
to
You
just
can't.
start.
You
Well, let
can't.
me figure this out. Right.
Yeah.
Your classes were very directed. You were on a pre-med track. You had to immediately go to med school. Right. And
Yep.
then anyone we know that went to med school, you knew that there was a very defined path that they took. And it's same with if somebody decided they wanted to be an attorney. You were taking the political science or history, probably. You took the LSATs and then you went to law school. And there was a very defined path. So I thought, and I used to sometimes envy those kids because I thought they pretty much decided what they want to do. Now,
Mm-hmm.
we know a lot of those people probably did that and then they hated it when they got in it, maybe. You and I were in a bit more, we kind of knew what we wanted to do, but we were more trial and error, I would suppose.
Oh my God, I was complete trial and error.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a special effects technician. That
Well, you wanted to work in film
film,
too, I think.
especially specifically creating special effects, and that you didn't really go to school for that at the time. You had to kind of work around it, and then I had no plan of how I was going to end up in that. I just thought I needed to learn design things, film things, and I really kind of fell into advertising and marketing quite by accident, and loved it because advertising to me, it's a series of problems that you solve, and you're always given a new problem. It's a different brand, it's a different product, and so it keeps you going, right? You're not on the same thing. But if you want to be a lawyer, as Tim said a moment ago, there's a clear course of action for that. There was the LSATs, there was years of your law degree, then there was the bar, then there was getting the. And how many lawyers do we know who aren't practicing law because they actually don't
Right.
like it, right?
But the kids that wanted to be, like all my friends that went to be podiatrists.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a very specialized thing. How they knew when they were in undergrad that they wanted to be podiatrists, or somebody wants to be a pediatrician, or somebody wants to be a ear, nose, and throat doctor. I don't know. I mean, I guess I never wanted to be a doctor, so I didn't have that sort of, I didn't have that sort of chemistry to
Or
say,
the
oh, I want
drive
to
to
do
do
this.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would always marvel at kids that said, I'm going to be an engineer, I'm going to be an architect, or I'm going to be, and it was a very defined career path. So that's why when I read this, I thought, well, I'm not so sure it fits for everybody, but, maybe for the people that just don't exactly know, maybe the liberal arts major, it, it fits for. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
And towards the end of the article, they said something that I'm a firm believer in. And they said, definitely make mistakes. There's this notion that every mistake we make is going to cost grave consequences or something. But that's the age where if you don't like what you're doing, get out of it, quit.
Right.
You're going to land on your feet. And I often use the phrase fail up. Like I think you and I were taught how to fail up. Like we fail, we've made mistakes, but because of our network, our friends, our resilience, we internalize the mistake, we figure out, and then we move on to our next thing and we move ahead. So I thought that was a good takeaway there. But this interesting piece, and I'm fascinated by the fact that so many people landed on that. Just do it, because they must have reviewed their own history and thought, "Gosh, I should have moved off the dime quicker." Right?
Yeah. And I get, yeah, I think so. And I've noticed kids that are the generation under us, they don't have any patience. They think they should be at a senior level right away, right? They don't want to do any of the work.
Yeah, we've seen that in terms of what they're asking for salaries, and yeah,
Right.
exactly.
They'll come in with no experience saying, well, my school says I'm worth X, Y, and Z. Well, you have no experience. You haven't done anything. It's also just the opposite in ways, I guess. I was surprised to hear that they said 47 was the age where
Most
people.
tech entrepreneurs, yeah, start their businesses, or the successful ones, yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. So, well, it was a good article though. I don't know. I don't know about Bezos so much. I think Zuckerberg fell in the dumb luck.
Well, you saw the movie The Social Network, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot there, and look
What
at
do you-
what, yeah, Facebook now, my God, and yes, let's create a directory that people can get online to meet students instead of the student handbook that you got. Let's make it electronic, and from
Well,
there,
you could have done that. We all had the student handbook. I thought of this
Yeah.
the other day. John could have done this. Very simple.
We didn't
thing.
have one at Binghamton. No, you had one because your school was smaller.
You didn't have one?
Nope, our school was too big for that. There was a directory of phone numbers and stuff, but it wasn't anything as complex as pictures and stuff
Ours
like
was
that.
called the Blue and White, and they used to call it the baby book. It was blue and white, and it was the pictures of all the freshmen and
The
where they were
baby
from.
book.
And you went through it, and you circled who you wanted to meet, who you wanted to bump into, and you'd be like, they don't look like that picture. And you figured out where their dorms were and where you might bump into them and who they were doing, what was what, and who would live near who, and who might have gone to the high school of somebody you knew. Yeah, it was. When I think about it now, that's the same with LinkedIn. We should have invented LinkedIn. Resumes online. That's all it is.
Yes, and yes, and yes, and a couple of pictures and links, and yeah.
You're a smart guy, John. I want by the end of the week, I want an idea that we can bring to market.
We can bring to market. Okay. Well, I had one. I think if we put a rock in a box with some hay.
Hey.
I know. Pet Rock Man made, I forget how much they just recently talked about that on a TV show. It was like something about
$10 million?
It was more than that. He made a lot of money off that. It was just rocks, right? Oh, God bless the 70s and the
I
early
was
80s.
listening to, that song, we used to play it all the time. Used to get aggravated because we played it too long. Shaq and Katie and I loved it and used to get all tuned up because we played too long. Man, I feel like a woman. Shania Twain.
Shania Twain. That was one of your, woman. Yeah.
You know what she made on that song?
How much?
It's like $500 million. And she's singing it in Vegas now. It's almost like
is she like a resident
90 minutes.
artist in Vegas now? Is that?
Yeah, she's a resident. Yeah, and I think they open with the song, they do it in the middle, they do it at the end. She doesn't have much else.
She did? Seriously?
Yeah, there's lots of dancing in the middle. If you see it on YouTube. But I'm like, oh my God, we need one song, Nash. We either need one song. Man, I feel. Maybe we could say, woman, I feel like a man. Boom, boom, boom. I don't know. Pretty basic song.
Well, when you get finished with your piano lessons, because I know you were thinking of self-teaching. I know Bob was.
Listen, yes. I'd like to play the boogie woogie piano. There's a lot of things I like to do. I want to learn to play the bagpipe.
I'd say
maybe the mandolin. I don't know.
Choose any one of them and get going right away, because it's going to be a while before we see you doing weddings. But I think the bagpipe could be an interesting draw.
Oh, one of our listeners, by the way, came up to me. He came and he listens to the show. He was in Rehoboth, and he came to one of my events as I'm running election events for commissioner, and he taught himself during the event how to play the little mandolin.
Oh my God! Seriously?
Yeah, he was going to do a concert. Rob is his name.
He learned mandolin.
Yeah, during the event.
My God! So, well, see, Tim, that was time well.
Anyway, I'd like us to have something by the end of the week that we can bring to market.
All right, I'll put it on the to-do list. I'll get going.
Maybe we can resurrect the candelier or something.
Let's go back and find some ideas that we didn't activate properly and go from there. Yeah.
So, hey, thanks for joining us, as always. It's Tim Bennett and John Nash here. And the focus group is, as we like to say, head over to focusgroupradio.com. Find all of our media housed there, our video broadcast as well as our audio. And we release the show on Wednesdays, and then there's an audio feed that gets released on Saturdays, which is very, as John says, digestible. You can take it to the gym, take us to the beach, listen in the car, listen on the train, listen on your walk, and take us with you on the weekends while you do your chores. And be sure to catch our Tuesday podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned. Again, all of our media is housed there, as well as our sponsors. And thanks to our friends at Deep Discount. You'll see their logo there. Click on it and start shopping away. We hope all of you have a good week and are having a great summer. If you haven't got vaccinated, it might be a good idea to do it, you folks in the South. So
wag the finger. Wag the finger. Yeah.
It's not. We didn't even talk about it, but it's unbelievable to me. But anyway, so here we are. So, yeah, get vaccinated, and let's get things going here. So, everyone have a good week. Take care.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.